My sister waved as I cleared my desk. Her false accusations had worked. Karma's a witch, isn't it? She smirked. But when our biggest client called me that evening, my sister had no idea that her sabotage would lead to my biggest success. Turns out she wasn't the only one who'd been keeping secrets. You're done here, Alexandra. Stephen Bennett, the managing partner of Bennett & Associates, couldn't even look me in the eye as he delivered the news. The evidence of client information leaks is substantial. I sat across from his massive mahogany desk, my hands gripping the armrests of my chair so tightly that my knuckles had turned white. Through the glass walls of his corner office, I could see my sister Victoria, standing by the water cooler, pretending to fill her cup while watching the scene unfold. My name is Alexandra Parker, and at 32, I was about to lose everything I had spent the last decade building, or at least that's what Victoria thought. Stephen, you know me, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. I've been with this firm for 8 years. I brought in half our major accounts. Why would I risk that by leaking client information? He shuffled the papers on his desk, papers I knew Victoria had carefully crafted to frame me. The evidence is quite clear, Alexandra. Client details were sent from your email account to competing firms. The timestamps, the digital trail, it's all here. Of course, it was. Victoria had always been clever with technology, a skill she'd apparently been using to plan my downfall. I glanced at her again, catching the slight smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. At 29, my younger sister had always lived in my shadow at the firm, something she'd clearly grown tired of. Can I at least see the evidence? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I'm sorry, but given the sensitive nature of the situation, we need to handle this quickly and discreetly. Security will escort you to clear your desk. He finally met my eyes, and I saw a flicker of doubt there. For what it's worth, Alexandra. I never expected this from you. Neither did I, Stephen, neither did I. As I walked out of his office, Victoria fell into step beside me, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor in perfect rhythm. Goodbye, sis, she said loud enough for the entire office to hear. Karma's a witch, isn't it? I turned to face her, taking in her perfectly styled blonde hair, her expensive suit, and the gleam of triumph in her eyes. You know, Victoria, our mother always said you were the clever one. I smiled, watching confusion flicker across her face. I guess she was right. The confusion turned to suspicion. She hadn't expected me to be so calm. Good. Let her worry. Security waited by my desk, my former desk now with a cardboard box. 8 years of work of building relationships, of proving myself reduced to whatever personal items I could carry out in a single box. As I packed my things, I could feel the stares of my coworkers. Could hear the whispers already starting. Did you hear? Alexandra Parker. Can you believe it? Always the quiet ones. Victoria hovered nearby, obviously savoring every moment of my humiliation. She planned this perfectly. I had to give her that. The fake email trail, the leaked client information, the careful manipulation of timestamps to make it look like I've been selling secrets to competitors for months. It was exactly the kind of detailed scheme she'd always excelled at. What she didn't know was that I'd seen it coming. 3 months ago, I'd noticed small changes in how clients were being handled. Meetings rescheduled without my knowledge, proposals altered after I'd submitted them, tiny discrepancies in client communications. Most people would have dismissed these as simple office mix-ups, but I knew better. I'd grown up with Victoria after all. I've learned long ago that my sister's smile usually meant trouble. When we were kids, she'd smile just like that before blaming me for whatever mischief she caused. When we were teenagers, she'd smile before telling our parents about the parties I'd gone to, conveniently leaving out her own attendance. And now at Bennett & Associates, she smiled as she systematically destroyed my career, or so she thought. As I placed my family photo in the box, Mom, Dad, Victoria and me at last year's Christmas party, all smiles and false harmony, I thought about the call I'd received last week from Marcus Chen, our biggest client. Alexandra, he'd said, his voice concerned. Something strange is happening with our account. Documents are being altered after our meetings. Numbers aren't adding up. I know, Marcus, I'd replied. I need you to trust me for a few more days. Can you do that? He decreed, just as I'd known he would. We built a solid relationship over the years, based on trust and results. Victoria had always imbibed that the way clients would specifically request to work with me instead of her. I placed my coffee mug in the box, a gift from my first client painted with the words, "Trust the process," and thought about the USB drive hidden in its base. Victoria wasn't the only one who could play with technology. Need any help carrying that out? Victoria asked, her voice dripping with false concern. It's the least I can do for my big sister. I straightened up, meeting her gaze. No, thanks, Vic. I think you've done enough. Her smile faltered slightly. Again, she'd expected tears, pleading, anger, anything but this calm acceptance. Victoria had never understood that true power isn't in the attack, but in the response. As security walked me to the elevator, I caught fragments of Victoria's conversation with Stephen. Such a shame, never suspected, lucky we caught it. Her voice faded as the elevator doors close, and I allowed myself a small smile. The security guard, Mike, who had known me for years, looked uncomfortable. Miss Parker, for what it's worth, this doesn't sit right with me. Thanks, Mike. Sometimes things aren't what they seem. The lobby was mercifully empty as I walked out of Bennett and Associates for what Victoria thought would be the last time. The spring air was crisp, carrying the scent of blooming cherry blossoms from a park across the street. I always loved this time of year in a city. It felt like a time of renewal, of fresh starts. How fitting. I grabbed a taxi, gave the driver my address, and pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from our mother. News traveled fast in our family. A text from Dad, "Call me when you can." And there, right on schedule, a message from Marcus Chen, "Just heard the news, still trust you. Dinner at 7. I texted back a quick confirmation and leaned back in the seat, watching the city scroll past. Victoria had always been so focused on the game she was playing that she never stopped to consider whether someone else might be playing a longer one. My apartment was a sanctuary of calm when I arrived, a sleek, modern space on the 20th floor with views of the city skyline. I set the box down on my kitchen counter, and finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. Years of working alongside my sister, watching her quiet resentment grow, knowing this day would eventually come. Our mother called again as I was making coffee. I let it go to voicemail, not ready for her particular brand of family dysfunction. She had always favored Victoria, excusing her behavior with phrases like "she's just spirited" or "she's finding her way." Even now I could imagine her response. "Are you sure he didn't do something to provoke her?" The coffee machine hummed, filling my apartment with the rich aroma of fresh espresso. I removed the false bottom from my coffee mug, retrieving the USB drive hidden there. Victoria might be clever with technology, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I had been the one to hire the firm's IT team, and they were very, very good at tracking unauthorized access to the system. My phone buzzed again. A text from Victoria this time. "Hope you're not taking this too hard, sis. Business is business after all." I could picture her sitting at my old desk, probably already rearranging things to her liking, assuming she'd won. Victoria had always been good at games, but she'd never learned the most important rule. Don't celebrate until you're sure the game is over. As I prepared for my dinner with Marcus, I thought about the evidence stored on that USB drive. Every unauthorized access to my email account, every altered document, every fabricated timestamp, all traced back to Victoria's computer. But more importantly, it contained proof of something else, something she'd been doing behind everyone's back. The sun was setting as I dressed for dinner, painting the city in shades of gold and pink. From my window I could see the Bennett and Associates building, its windows glowing in the dusk. Victoria would be leaving soon, probably heading out to celebrate her victory. My phone buzzed one final time. Another message from Marcus, bringing someone with me. "Hope that's okay?" I smiled, slipping the USB drive into my purse. "Of course," I replied, "the more the merrier." Victoria had always accused me of being too trusting, too naive. What she'd never understood was that trust properly placed was the strongest weapon in business. While she had been busy destroying my reputation at Bennett and Associates, she had forgotten about the relationships I had built outside the firm. As I headed out to meet Marcus, I thought about something our grandmother used to say. Success isn't about climbing over others to reach the top. It's about building something so tall that nobody can tear it down. Victoria had torn down what I had built at Bennett and Associates, but she had unknowingly given me the opportunity to build something much, much bigger. And the foundation for that something was meeting me for dinner in exactly 1 hour. The game wasn't over, it was just beginning. Marcus Chen was already seated at our usual table at La Maison when I arrived, but it was his companion that made me pause. Next to him sat Eleanor Wright, CEO of Wright Global Investments, one of the largest investment firms in the country. "Alexandra." Marcus stood to greet me, his face showing none of the concern from his earlier messages. "I believe you know Eleanor?" I shook her hand, noting her firm grip and appraising gaze. "By reputation only. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Wright. Eleanor, please." She gestured for me to sit. "Marcus has told me quite a bit about you, particularly about today's events." A waiter appeared with wine, pouring 3 glasses of what I recognized as Eleanor's personal vintage, a detail I've learned during my research into Wright Global. Nothing about this dinner was coincidental. "I imagine Victoria is quite pleased with herself," Marcus said, his tone carefully neutral, "though she might find client loyalty isn't as easily transferred as she thinks." I took a sip of wine, letting the rich flavor settle on my tongue before responding. "Victoria has always been focused on immediate victories. She rarely considers the long game. Eleanor leaned forward, her silver hair catching the soft lighting of the restaurant. That's exactly what interests me, Alexandra. While your sister was orchestrating your removal, you were gathering evidence, weren't you? I reached into my purse and placed the USB drive on the table, not just of her sabotage. 3 months ago, I discovered Victoria had been doing more than just leaking client information. She's been selling insider trading tips to a hedge fund manager named James Porter. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Porter, he's been making unusually successful trades lately. Very successful, Eleanor agreed. My team has been watching him, but we couldn't figure out his source until now. I pulled out my phone, bringing up a series of screenshots. Victoria thought she was clever, using encrypted messaging apps to communicate with Porter, but she forgot about the firm's backup system, the one I implemented 2 years ago. Every message, every data transfer, everything is logged and archived. Eleanor's eyes sparkled with interests. And you've been collecting this evidence while allowing her plan to unfold. Sometimes you have to lose a battle to win the war. I passed her my phone. Victoria was so focused on framing me for leaking client information, she never noticed I was tracking her actual leaks. Marcus chuckled softly. I must admit, Alexandra, when you asked me to play along with her scheme, I was skeptical. But now I understand. Bennett and Associates' loss will be someone else's gain, Eleanor said, her meaning clear. Wright Global has been looking to expand our legal division. We need someone who understands not just the law, but strategy, someone who can think 3 moves ahead. The waiter returned to take our orders, giving me a moment to process what was happening. Eleanor Wright wasn't just offering me a job, she was offering me an opportunity to build something of my own. The position would come with full autonomy, Eleanor continued once we were alone again. You build your own team, choose your own clients, and of course, we'd be very interested in the evidence you've collected about Porter's insider trading. What about Bennett and Associates? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Marcus set down his wine glass. I've already informed Stephen that I'll be taking my business elsewhere, as will several other clients who trust my judgment. Victoria's victory may be shorter-lived than she expects, Eleanor added with a slight smile. I thought about my sister probably still celebrating what she saw as her ultimate triumph. Victoria had always been the one our parents praised for her ambition, her ruthlessness, her ability to do whatever it takes to succeed. They'd seen my methodical approach as a weakness, my relationship building as a waste of time. When would you want me to start? I asked Eleanor. How about now? She pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. Your contract, should you choose to accept it. The compensation package is on page 3. I opened the folder and my eyes widened at the number. It was triple what I've been making at Bennett and Associates. There's one more thing, Eleanor said, her voice taking on a more serious tone. The SEC would be very interested in the evidence you've collected. Your sister and Porter could face serious consequences. I closed the folder thinking about all the times Victoria had undermined me, belittled me, tried to make me doubt myself. The old Alexandra might have hesitated, might have felt guilty about turning her in. But Victoria had changed the rules when she decided to destroy my career. She'd chosen this path, and now she would face the consequences. I'll have my team deliver the evidence to the SEC tomorrow morning, I said firmly. Eleanor smiled, raising her glass. To new beginnings and long games, Marcus added. We clinked glasses just as my phone buzzed with another text from Victoria. Missing your office yet? Don't worry. I'll take good care of it. I put my phone away without responding. Let her enjoy her moment. Tomorrow would bring its own surprises. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of strategy discussions and future plans. Eleanor had a vision for Wright Global's legal division that aligned perfectly with what I'd always wanted to build. A team focused on long-term relationships and ethical practice, not just quick wins and billable hours. As we were finishing our coffee, Marcus cleared his throat. There's one other thing you should know, Alexandra. Your sister has already reached out to several of your former clients, trying to convince them to stay with her at Bennett and Associates. Of course, she has. I wasn't surprised. Victoria had always tried to step into spaces I vacated, whether it was my position on the debate team in high school or my first apartment after college. She's in for quite a shock when she realizes those relationships aren't as easily transferred as she thinks, Eleanor said. Trust is earned, not inherited. Outside the restaurant, my car was waiting, another perk of my new position at Wright Global. As Eleanor's driver held the door open, she turned to me one last time. Alexandra, I've been in this business for 40 years. I've seen every kind of corporate sabotage, every kind of betrayal, but I've rarely seen someone handle it with as much grace and strategic thinking as you have. Thank you, Eleanor. Don't thank me yet, she said with a knowing smile. Tomorrow when the SEC shows up at Bennett and Associates, you might find yourself dealing with more family drama than you bargained for. She was right, of course. Our mother would be devastated, our father disappointed. The family name would be tarnished by Victoria's actions, but families, like companies, sometimes needed to face hard truths to become stronger. As my car wound through the city streets, I thought about the office I cleared out just hours ago. Victoria was probably sitting there right now, feeling secure in her victory, unaware that her world was about to collapse around her. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from our mother. Victoria told us what happened. How could you betray the firm's trust like this? We raised you better. I turned off my phone without responding. Tomorrow would bring enough drama. Tonight was for celebrating. Victoria had tried to tear me down, but in doing so, she inadvertently pushed me towards something much bigger than Bennett and Associates could ever offer. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about rising above. The next morning, I arrived at Wright Global's gleaming headquarters just as the sun was rising over the city. Eleanor had arranged for me to have a corner office on the 45th floor, higher than I'd ever been at Bennett and Associates, with views that made my old office look like a storage closet. My phone had been buzzing non-stop since dawn. News travels fast in the legal world, and the SEC's arrival at Bennett and Associates had already become the talk of the city. I ignored the calls and messages, focusing instead on setting up my new workspace. Then my phone lit up with a call I couldn't ignore, Stephen Bennett himself. Alexandra. His voice was strained, lacking its usual confidence. We need to talk. About what, Stephen? About how quickly you believed Victoria's lies? Or about how she's been selling insider trading tips to James Porter? There was a long pause. The SEC is here. They have substantial evidence. Yes, they do. I arranged my degrees on the wall of my new office, making sure they were perfectly straight. Evidence I collected while Victoria was busy framing me. Why did you come to me with this? I almost laughed. Would you have believed me? You didn't even give me a chance to defend myself yesterday. Alexandra, please. This could destroy the firm. That's not my problem anymore, Stephen. I have a new firm to worry about. As if on cue, Eleanor appeared in my doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. I ended the call without another word. I take it Bennett and Associates is having an interesting morning. She handed me one of the coffees. You could say that I took a sip, appreciating the premium roast so much better than the breakroom coffee at my old firm. Victoria's been arrested. Eleanor nodded, settling into one of my visitor chairs. The SEC doesn't take kindly to insider trading, neither does the Bar Association. She'll probably be disbarred. Among other consequences, Eleanor studied me carefully, having second thoughts. I thought about Victoria's smug face as I cleared out my desk, about all the years of her subtle sabotage and manipulation. My phone buzzed again, our father this time. I let it go to voicemail. Family can be complicated, Eleanor observed, but sometimes the kindest thing we can do is let people face the consequences of their actions. A knock on my door interrupted us. Marcus Chen stood there holding a large basket filled with my favorite pastries from the French bakery near my old office. Housewarming gift? He grinned. Or office warming, I suppose. Perfect timing, Eleanor said, standing. Alexandra, we have a meeting in an hour to discuss the structure of your new division. I'll let you two catch up. After she left, Marcus set the basket down and took the seat she vacated. I just came from Bennett and Associates. It's chaos over there. How bad? Victoria was let out in handcuffs. Stephen's trying to calm the other partners and half the staff is updating their resumes. He leaned back. Your mother's there too, telling anyone who will listen that this is all a misunderstanding. Of course, she was. Our mother had spent years excusing Victoria's behavior, refusing to see the damage it caused. She'll have a hard time explaining away the evidence, I said, pulling a crescent from the basket. Speaking of evidence, Marcus lowered his voice. Rumor has it Porter's already agreed to testify against Victoria in exchange for leniency. Apparently, he has recordings of their conversations. I smiled. Victoria had always been so confident in her ability to manipulate others that she never considered they might be playing her too. My phone lit up with another text from our mother. Your sister is devastated. How could you do this to your own family? I showed the message to Marcus, who shook his head. Funny how family loyalty only seems to work one way. It always has. I turned my phone face down on the desk. Victoria could do no wrong and I can do no right. At least now, everyone knows the truth. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of meetings and introductions. Eleanor had assembled a talented team, and they all seemed eager to work under my leadership. It was everything I dreamed of building at Bennett and Associates, but with more resources and complete autonomy. Around noon, my assistant, I had an assistant now, informed me that Victoria's arrest was making headlines. Former Bennett and Associates partner arrested for insider trading screamed to local news websites. Below the headlines were photos of Victoria being led out of the building. Her perfect composure finally cracked. I was reviewing potential office spaces for my expanding division when my father finally left a voicemail. Alexandra, what you've done. I know Victoria has made mistakes, but destroying her career? Your mother is beside herself. We raised you to protect family, not betray it. Call me back, we need to fix this, fix this. That had always been their solution. Sweep Victoria's actions under the rug, make excuses, pressure me to forgive and forget, but not this time. Eleanor stopped by again in the late afternoon, just as I was finishing up calls with potential team members. Your sister's asking to make a deal, she informed me. She's offering to provide information about other illegal activities at Bennett and Associates in exchange for a reduced sentence. Of course she is. I wasn't surprised. Victoria had always been quick to throw others under the bus to save herself. Did she implicate anyone specific? Stephen Bennett himself. Eleanor's eyes twinkled. Apparently he knew about some of her activities but chose to look the other way. The pieces clicked into place. That's why he'd been so quick to believe Victoria's accusations against me. He was already compromised. The firm won't survive this, I realized. No, Eleanor agreed. But that creates opportunities for us. Several of their top associates have already reached out about positions here. I thought about the firm my father had built, the legacy he'd been so proud of, now crumbling because of Victoria's actions and his own willful blindness. Sometimes, Eleanor said softly, we have to let things fall apart so something better can be built in their place. 1 month later, I stood in my new office at Wright Global, watching the sunset over the city. From here, I could see the Bennett and Associates building where moving trucks had been parked all week. The firm was dissolving. Its remaining clients scattered its reputation in tatters. Victoria had taken a plea deal, avoiding jail time but accepting disbarment and a substantial fine. She moved back in with our parents, her designer wardrobe, and luxury apartment sacrificed to pay her legal fees. Last I heard, she was working as a legal assistant at a small firm outside the city, the only job she could get with her now tarnished name. My phone buzzed a text from my father. Can we meet? Just us. After a moment's hesitation, I replied, La Maison, 7 p.m. He was already there when I arrived, looking older than I remembered. The past month had taken its toll. You look well, he said as I sat down. Wright Global must be treating you right. It is. I studied him carefully. How's Victoria? He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. Struggling. Your mother's taking it hard too. And you? I've been doing a lot of thinking, he admitted, about how we raised you both, about the things we let slide with Victoria. And we failed you, Alexandra. We excused Victoria's behavior, made you feel like you had to be the responsible one, the understanding one. We never saw how much that hurt you. I took a sip of water, letting his words sink in. This was the closest he'd ever come to an apology. Victoria made her own choices, I said finally. But yes, you and Mom enabled them. She asks about you, says she understands now why you did what you did. I thought about my sister who'd spent years trying to tear me down only to destroy herself in the process. I didn't do it for revenge, Dad. I did it because it was right. He nodded slowly. I know. That's what makes it harder. You were always the ethical one, the one we should have listened to. Our food arrived, giving us both a moment to collect our thoughts. The restaurant kind of corporate clients I now represented at Wright Global. Eleanor Wright offered to buy what's left of the firm, he said suddenly. She wants to absorb our remaining assets into your division. I knew this, of course. I'd suggested it to Eleanor myself. What are you going to do? Except I think it's time to retire anyway. He managed a small smile. Maybe you can hire some of our old staff. Give them a fresh start. Already doing that. Sarah from accounting starts next week. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of unspoken words lingering between us. Finally he spoke again. I'm proud of you, Alexandra. I should have said that more often. Thank you, Dad. As we finished dinner, he reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Your mother wanted me to give you this. Victoria wrote it last week. I took the envelope but didn't open it. Some wounds needed more time to heal. Back in my office, I finally read Victoria's letter. It was brief but sincere. Dear Alexandra, I'm sorry for everything. You were stronger than I ever gave you credit for. Smarter too. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if you don't. Victoria. I placed the letter in my desk drawer and turned to look out at the city lights. My phone buzzed with a message from Eleanor. Dinner, tomorrow? We should celebrate the Bennett acquisition. Looking forward to it, I replied. Sometimes I realize the best endings aren't about revenge or triumph. They're about growth, about becoming the person you were meant to be despite others' attempts to hold you back. Victoria had tried to destroy my career, but in doing so, she'd set me free. Free to build something better, something stronger, something truly mine. And that was the greatest victory of all.